Secretly recorded from deep inside the bowels of a decommissioned missile silo, we bring you the man, one single man who wants to bring light to the darkness and dark to the lightness. Although he's not always right, he is always certain. So now, with security protocols in place, the protesters have been forced back behind the barricades and the blast doors are now sealed. Without further delay, let me introduce you to the host of Hutcast, Mr. Tim Hutner.
Thank you, Sergeant at Arms. You can now take your post. The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely those of the individual and participants. These views and opinions expressed do not represent those of the host or the show. The opinions in this broadcast are not to replace your legal, medical, or spiritual professionals. Welcome to Hutcast. Today is February 11th, 2024. In the studio today we have Mark Uglem. And Mark, did I pronounce that properly?
Yep, that's good enough.
And what we do is today we're going to have the special guest. He's done a lot of stuff for the state of Minnesota here in Champlin. He was what district were you in?
Well, it was District 36A before we did the redistricting.
36A. And we're just going to have a conversation. So for Hutcast, stand by. We'll be right back. Buying a gun is no ordinary purchase. Whether you're a hunter, competitive shooter, or self-defense is your priority, there are many kinds of guns and many kinds of training programs. You use your brain all the time. You will rarely need to use your gun. Before you find yourself in a situation where you need to make a critical decision, make sure your training is the best you can get. It could be the difference between life and death, or freedom or detention. For the best quality training, check out permittocarry.us. If you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin or even Florida, give Gene German a call, 612-388-2403. That's Permit to Carry US. Or call Gene German at 612-388-2403. Welcome back to Hutcast. As promised, Mark Uglem is in the studio today, and he's going to give us his insight of what he's done over his career. And I'll tell you what, I met him first when we had a thing going in our hood. Champlin and was it Maple Grove? No, it was Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, and they wanted to do a Project Hot Dish, and they wanted to put an Amazon right on the border of Champlin, and there was no infrastructure on the ground. There was nothing big enough to handle that kind of input-output, and I watched Mark handle that council like it was a bunch of 2-year-olds, and he's the guy in charge. And he was literally there just to present his opinion, and I'll tell you what, I'm glad I got him in the show today. Mark, welcome, and thank you for coming to the show.
Well, thank you, Tim. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I was in that day, and the wife looks at me and says, we got to talk to this guy. And I says, yep, absolutely, because he's the guy who knows what's going on. And she just absolutely loved it. We share a party alignment. We dig that too. So, we're good, strong 2A guys. So are you ready to start out with, what inspired you? How did you get into this? And you went to the University of Minnesota Duluth is what I've seen. And how did that shape your perspective into this urban development and the policy of making this work?
Well, pretty good question, Tim. I guess everybody has their reasons for getting involved with the public sector and cities and state politics and things. But, I was always interested in that when I went to college at UMD. I did graduate with a degree in political science and urban studies. I had some pretty good professors up there and became very good friends with them, even to this day, although they're retired like I am. But it's something that I've always felt that so many people are so busy, but you just can't come home after a day of work and close the door and forget about what's going on in your city or your state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can make a difference if you really try. So I've always felt that you should give a little bit of yourself for for your city or your state or even your country.
Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I did try and run for mayor, and I also tried and ran for District Ward 1 in our city and got my butt kicked both times, but hey, that's what the people wanted at the time.
Well, there's a certain art to it, and when you lay yourself out, and that's a good thing, Tim, but when you lay yourself out for public opinion, you have to be prepared either to win or lose, but you still, at least you played the game.
Yeah, you engaged.
Yep.
A lot of people sit on their butt and they say, well, things ain't happening. They're not, I don't like the way it's going, and they just want to whine about it and never engage it.
No, that's absolutely correct. And again, citizen input is very, very important. If you're a legislator or a council member or whatever, you have to listen to the people. Unfortunately, today it seems like too many people want to push their personal agenda, and that, to me, is not good politics.
It's so polarized, though.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so much personal agenda, you don't even know where the agenda starts and the real stuff stops.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, bipartisanship is a rare thing now. And I don't think I've ever seen a country more polarized than it is right now.
Oh, for sure. And when do you think that polarization came in? Was that an Obama thing? Was that at what point did you see the most of this happen?
Well, I think it morphed over a period of time. And if you look at the history of American politics, we've had polarizations like this before. Obviously, the Civil War, and you can just go back to more modern times. The Roosevelt administration, a lot of the things that he did with the WPA and the CCC and some of his programs to grow us out of the Depression were really revolutionary at that point in time, and he got slapped down by the Supreme Court numerous times, and there was big polarization then too. When a country goes through difficult times, you kind of fight to find your way, and we're doing that right now.
It's a pretty hairy way, isn't it?
Yeah, you could say that. It's very unfortunate. It comes down to a number of factors, leadership being a very big one.
Now, for some of you in other countries, WPA is the War Powers Act, and that was by Roosevelt, was it? In what?
Works Progress Administration.
Ah, okay. So I'm on a different subject.
CCC was Civilian Conservation Corps. These were two of many programs that Roosevelt initiated to get people back to work, but the government paid for it. And that was pretty rare. Social Security, another one that he brought in. Again, the government paying and individuals. So it was quite revolutionary at that point in time.
Wow. Now you were 10 years in the Minnesota House of Representatives. Is that correct?
No, 6. Three terms.
Okay.
Minnesota House, yep.
And what do you consider your most significant legislative accomplishment is?
Well,
was. Yeah.
I was. Well, first of all, I think when you say you're a Minnesota representative, you're representing the people. And I represented the city of Champlin and part of Coon Rapids. I was very, very pleased to promote Champlin's legislative agenda for projects such as the replacement of the Mill Pond Dam. Actually, then afterwards, redredging and repurposing the mill pond to what it is today from a swamp.
Well, yeah.
The Highway 169 improvements, things like that. But also on a bigger picture, one thing that's always bugged me is distracted driving. And I teamed up with one of my Democratic colleagues, Representative Frank Hornstein, who's still in the legislature, great guy. And together we were able to pass the hands-free driving bill, which is supposed to eliminate people that are texting or playing games or doing all kinds of crazy things on their phones. Unfortunately, with the real crush of police manpower problems. It's not enforced except in dire circumstances.
Right. And with those guys, his hands tied 90% of the time. You know, we've had Liz Collins on here and her husband, Bob Collins. Liz Collins. Bob
Kroll.
Kroll, yeah. And, and you know, what a great couple. And they launched their book from Hudcast. Great coverage. And you just listen to the side stories of what they had to go through during that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know Bob Kroll, and when they were up here in Champlin, I attended that event. I really think that Liz Collins did a wonderful job in that book. Real good investigative reporting backed by the facts.
Right. And the left want to tear it down for it because it's all hearsay and hyperbole. Really?
Listen, if you don't have a strong police force that enforces the laws, and I'm not saying that cops don't make mistakes because they do, they're human.
Yeah.
But you can see it all over the country today. Unless you support your local police, you are going to have problems. And you know what? Bad guys deserve to go to jail.
Every time without collecting go, yes.
Yep.
How do you feel about those guys in, what was it, Chicago, where those immigrants shot at those cops, started beating people up, and as they're coming out of the county courthouse, they're flipping everybody off on the way out?
Well, Tim, I was in New York just a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Staying in Times Square, and 3 blocks away from where that happened. And I can honestly tell you, New York is out of control. It's just out of control. And obviously, Bragg, the Manhattan district attorney, is a very poor excuse for a district attorney. Can you believe you beat up some cops and you are released bail free?
Yeah.
And then, of course, what are you going to do? I mean, it's really simple. You're going to flee. And to my knowledge, they still have not found those guys. I think one guy so far is in custody, but all over the country, and this is obviously going to be a big election issue, but if you travel
Okay.
much, you will see it. And we like to do a lot of long-distance motorcycle touring in the summer.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, we've been all over North America on bikes and on motorcycles, but you see it. We were out in Montana this last summer, and the last place I would expect to see a huge homeless camp, but we did.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Well, we RV.
Okay.
So we just got a new bus this year, and we're going to burn some fuel like it's, going out of style.
Yeah.
And we see it. We see pieces and parts of it. We're looking for it.
Well, I wish some of our politicians, particularly the guy in the driver's seat in Washington, D.C., would get real and go, instead of flying around in Air Force One, would get on the ground and go see what's really going on. Obviously, the border, but the homeless crisis, the fentanyl crisis, the law enforcement crisis, and everything else. These are all things that are fixable. But you got to know it. You got to know what's going on rather than head off to your beach house in Delaware every weekend.
Yeah, but do you think he's capable of knowing it?
No, obviously, what we've seen, particularly this last week.
Right.
Yeah. It's really...
They're making excuses for him. Now they're setting a dual standard. Well, he didn't know what he was doing. Well, if you don't know what you're doing on government documents...
It's really too bad. I mean, the guy's 81 years old.
Yeah.
And some people can be 81 and be very viable. But there's a lot of people that are 81 years old that, they're getting ready for the nursing home or whatever. And Biden is one step away from that.
Right. And the left refuses the socialist left refuses to pay attention to this.
Well, I hold out much hope that the American electorate, the American people, will see through that and make the proper choices this election cycle. It's critical. It's
big time.
Absolutely critical for this country. You and I have been around a long time, and you look at elections, and this is one of the most critical elections I can think of, probably in modern history.
If you get a chance, listen to a couple of shows back where I engaged the Maine Secretary of State and the Colorado Secretary of State. Now you know where I'm going with this, right?
Yep.
And I wrote him a letter, and I says, look, I have every intention of filing a suit against you and the company, or your company, your state of whatever, for interfering with a federal election by saying that you're going to keep Trump off the ballot, which in my mind, that's what they're doing. Now, I'm not a big Trumper, but we hired the right guy to do the right job at the right time, and it's time to move on for us.
Well, Tim, I tell people, and I'm not a big Trumper either, but I like the results.
Yes.
And you can say what you want about Trump. He's a very abrasive personality.
Yep.
And particularly with the soccer moms that may be listening out there and everything else. I mean, he's a guy that you can really hate. But
easily.
Yes, but he delivers results.
Yeah, he produces.
And there's a reason he's a billionaire. He's a very, very good businessman. And, before I got into politics, I think I told you, I spent 35 years in private business.
Mm-hmm.
And you can bring those business practices to politics. And Trump did that.
Yes, he did.
He understood that. And all you have to do is ask yourself, are you better off today under Biden, or were you better off under Trump? And I think the answer to that is quite clear.
Right. Did you read The Art of the Deal? Did you ever get through to his book on that?
No, I never did.
Okay. You can hear that narcissism in it. It's just the way he is.
Yeah.
And like you say, he's very abrasive, but he wasn't the right guy for the job. He was the right guy for the job. If you get where I'm going.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think that's very important, both in business and politics, is that you surround yourself with good people.
The people that put you in spot, yes.
And unfortunately, just look at it. Biden, I was talking to an individual here this weekend while we were up ice fishing, and we were talking about Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State. Well, can you tell me, Blinken's all over the place. The guy is probably got more flight miles than anybody. But what does he accomplish? I can't think of a single thing that he's really accomplished.
Kind of like Fauci.
Yeah. Well, that's another story.
Oh, it's a huge story, but it seems always come back to these guys who are in position.
Well, the bottom line is you got to be judged by your results. And the results today for the Biden administration nationally and everything else are pretty dismal. Now, you can talk about the economy, and yes, the economy's good, but, Biden's taking credit for bringing down.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Well, there is this thing called the Federal Reserve Board.
And there's a thing called whiplash.
They didn't do a good job. Remember, inflation is transitory, right? But they finally woke up, and they, through their fiscal and monetary policy, fighting the fiscal policy of the excessive spending of the Biden administration. But the monetary policy, everybody looks at interest rates, and they've driven down interest rates. That's fine, but they have other tools in the toolbox to do things like that with reserve requirements for banks and other things like that. And they're doing what any other Federal Reserve would do, and it's working, but Biden's taking credit for it.
Right. And what does Biden say? We're going to push inflation up so we can make the interest rates down.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hey, the guy never had a real job, right? He never had a real job.
I love his quote when he was sitting in front of the steelworkers in Ohio or something like that. And he says, "Hey, I don't work for you." And he did that.
He said that?
He did.
Yeah, well.
And I put it on the page, right? Because I run some pages here in town. And someone chimed in and says, "When did he say that?" And I just simply gave her the quote. And I didn't hear crap out of them.
No, it's another indication of his diminished mental capacity. And his second in command.
Yeah, Laffey.
The VP. I shudder to think what would happen, her going up against Putin or Xi in China. you got to have strong leadership. I don't care if it's a business.
Yep.
I don't care if it's at the city. Any place, you have to have strong leadership, and we are sorely lacking that.
You need a good type A, and you say it, you do it, you finish it.
Yeah,
every time.
And if you got to put up with Trump to get the results, that's fine. And for these people that are so afraid about the state of our democracy and Trump's going to declare himself king.
No, never happened.
I'm afraid they're just living in an alternate universe.
They just want something to hang their hat on.
Well, yeah, and we have institutions called the Supreme Court.
Yes,
and other institutions that certainly will make sure that never happens.
That's the point of it. Three checksums.
Right. Checks and balances, 3 layers of government, but let's not forget the 4th layer of government, the deep state, which hey, we used to call it the bureaucracy.
Okay.
Now they call it the deep state, but in many, it's just incredible to me, and I learned this over at the state legislature too, that these bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, make laws. Now we call the laws that they make rulemaking, and in the final analysis, whether it be at the federal level or the state level, the legislature grants these agencies the rulemaking process, which essentially become laws.
Yeah.
EPA is a perfect example of that, but all kinds of
ATF.
Well, yeah,
The SIG-TAC brace.
all the agencies do this, and unfortunately, our legislature and the federal legislature have trouble bringing that back. Now, the recent Supreme Court ruling, West Virginia ruling, tried to roll that back, but so far as well as I can see, there haven't been any other lawsuits and things that are enforcing that. But we need to roll back this useless rulemaking,
i.e., the Maine gal out in Maine, the Secretary of State.
Oh yeah. Well, no. I'm talking about regulations for. Let's just talk the gas stove thing, which has gotten a lot of press and everything else. Since when can the EPA
that one,
do a rule and take away your gas stoves? Or, goodness, what about electric cars?
Yeah, right.
And all of this. I want to drive my ICE engine, my internal combustion engine, and I don't think the government should have anything to say about what I'm going to be driving or what I'm going to be cooking on.
Yep.
Or my water heaters or anything like that.
What your doctor should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he believes, Jensen believes that the doctor and the patient are the people that should be in charge, not the government.
Well, but unfortunately, Tim, what I'm seeing with a lot of the younger generation, and I'm not going to knock the younger generation, but there are a number of people that really want government to take care of them.
Oh, geez.
And the student loan thing is another perfect example.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
Right. But again, where is the American ideal? You work hard, you're rewarded, and you pay your debts, and you do your thing. But now there's a number of people and the government has encouraged this, both state and federal, where the nanny state, the government's going to take care of you. Don't worry about a thing. Yeah, you can incur all these debts and everything else, whether it be rental debt or mortgage debt or college debt and things, but there might be a way where the government will pay for it.
You mean vote for it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Vote for a living, not work for a living.
Yeah. It's a bit of an upside down world right now, and hopefully we can get back to our roots and get back to the values that made America great.
Now, you were Champlin mayor for how many terms?
3 terms.
3 terms, and back then it was 2 years each, wasn't it?
Yep.
So 6 years. And how did Champlin mayor? And again, I serve a different city for a different thing, but it's not actual council. How did it prepare you for the House? I mean, the House is kind of a big step. And what were some of the key lessons learned in your mayorship, and did you apply at state level?
Well, actually, if you're a mayor and then you're elected to the House or the Senate over at the state, it prepares you a great deal. We have many people that are elected over there that have absolutely no prior government experience at all. They just walk in there. And, I had the educational background, and also I served on the Planning Commission down in Brooklyn Park when we did the Edinburgh projects and the housing around there and everything else. And then the Planning Commission here in Champlin. I was chair of the Planning Commission. Really, and then I was a council member for a term too. So it wasn't too hard a step, really.
So you were council when Boynton was in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Now I know the area.
Right.
So did that kind of set you up for the next level?
Well, like I say, you just don't want to come home, shut the door, and forget about what's going on. And Champlin, growing suburb, facing challenges. I think the city has done a wonderful job over the years. We've had good leadership. Nothing's perfect, but we've done a pretty good job, particularly when you compare Champlin to our peer cities in the northwest suburbs.
Kind of sounded open-ended there.
Well, I don't intend it to be open-ended. I guess really, if you look at law and order, for example, in the northwest suburbs,
okay,
and you see how well Champlin does by protecting our citizens and everything else, and you look south of us, and you see every day serious crime going on.
Yes.
So that benchmark, Champlin comes out with a A+.
Hands down.
Yep.
Hands down. The fuzz can do it, right?
They can, and they're supported by our council.
Yes, they are.
And then if you look at development, it's not by accident that Highway 169, our main thoroughfare, looks like it does. The Highway 169 development standards, which my administration and other administrations have held, the setbacks, the landscaping, the lack of billboards, and we're not lined from city edge to city edge with used car lots and other things. There's very careful consideration that has gone into the development of Champlin. And I guess I've always said that once you build it, it's there.
Right. Hard to get rid of.
So you better do it right the first time.
Yeah, but when you talk about multiple administrations, different councils, you're talking about, what was the crossings? How many names did that have?
Well, yeah, and that kind of morphs. I mean, Boynton started that project because he had roots there on the river and things, and he came to me and we discussed it, and we had some rundown apartments that were crime ridden.
Yep.
And there was so much potential there to, number one, increase tax base, number two, eliminate crime situations, number three, provide some really, really good housing and emphasize the river, to open up the river for our residents. These were all goals. And in government, you sit down and you establish these goals. In private business, we call it benchmarks, but it's pretty much the same. And unfortunately, one thing I learned is, at least in private business, if you're an executive or whatever, you can institute your program or whatever, and it's going to happen pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. In government, it takes a long time.
Oh, very long.
Yep.
And there's always resistance, and there's always some guy on your group or in a group down the road from you that have a a hard-on for something.
The not in my backyard syndrome.
NIMBY, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I faced that as an ED director in Dayton, and I'm just like, dudes, we got to move forward.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, Dayton's an interesting study right now. There's no question. Yeah.
And the crossings, I remember I was 16, and I was running for mayor at the time, I believe. And, they all want you to make political promises. I said, look, the only thing I can promise you is that if I get in, the heads are going to roll and people are going to do the job right. That's all I can tell you. And they want miracles from you. And you want to be honest with them. You want to say, look, it's not about miracles. This is about what I can do with 4 other people.
Exactly, because in the weak mayor system that most cities have,
yes,
you're one vote.
Yep. But
you have to drive the agenda as the leader, and you have to obviously line up the votes and everything else. But I've always said that what you're elected, you're most likely a person that is just interested in the city and everything else, but you're not a professional.
Right.
You don't have your master's degree or whatever. And so what I always said, and when I worked with Brett Heitkamp, our city administrator, and we had a very good working relationship, I said, Brett, here's the deal. The council are the people that provide you the direction. You're the professional that has to institute it.
Sure, implement it.
Yep. And if we want to go out for a request for proposal for a development area, or if we want to rezone anything and everything, or redevelop something, we're going to give you that direction, and I expect that we will execute that. And Brett's very good at that.
Yeah, but these previous sessions of council, it seemed a little turmoiled.
Well, you need to have direction from the top, but that's government, Tim. I mean, democracy is messy. Okay, if you want clean government, not good government, clean government, be a dictator.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I mean that's true though. Dictators don't make mistakes, right? Dictators don't have transparency, and in a democracy, it is about the messiest form of government that you could possibly think of. But unfortunately, people don't study government anymore. When I was in the legislature, Representative Dean Erdahl and myself, Dean's a ex-teacher from Litchfield, we actually found out that many school districts in the state were not teaching civics. And we had to pass a law that said, you're going to have to teach government to your kids in school, at least for one semester.
Isn't that common sense?
Well, yes, but not evidently in some educational systems in the state.
Isn't that insane?
The biggest threat to democracy is people that don't understand our system of government and democracy. And the January 6th thing, right?
Right.
Well, I knew you wanted to talk about this.
Well, I wasn't going to bring it up.
The January 6th thing, Trump got some very, very bad legal advice from that woman attorney who has since been, what was her name? Sidney Powell.
Mm.
And you know why? Trump was never in government before.
No, he was a private company.
And this elector thing, many people don't realize this, but the Electoral College is very convoluted. And I won't claim to be an expert on it, but my old college roommate, who was a political science professor at Minnesota Duluth, is. And, there have been in the past. In fact, Brett Baer wrote a very good book about this, about Ulysses S. Grant.
Okay.
And how Grant saved the Union after the Civil War, Reconstruction. It was very turbulent times because the South wanted to rise again. And the old politicians in the South, they weren't going to put up with, freedom of the slaves and the new forms of government and everything else. So they tried to kind of take control. In fact, Grant had to send the army in there a couple of times to restore peace.
Wow.
Yeah, Brett Baer does a very good job in this book. But so the election comes up. Grant's on his way out. He's served his 2 terms. But when the electors show up, there's two slates of electors from some of the southern states like Georgia, and there were a couple others. Well, one slate represented the true vote. The other slate was put in there by the southern politicians. And who's to determine who's the right slate of electors?
Sure.
Grant brokered a deal with the Supreme Court, and they worked it out where the electors that were the right electors elected the president. But there is nothing in the Electoral College Act that says if you're an elector that you have to represent the will of the people. Kind of mind-blowing, isn't it?
Sure got me quiet.
Yeah. But the way that things have worked is if you are an unfaithful elector, you are simply replaced by the state that sent the electors to the U.S. Congress. So unfaithful electors have occurred in the past, but the whole January 6th thing was very abhorrent. I being a member of the Minnesota State Legislature, when you walk in those halls and you walk up those big steps and everything else, you realize that you're really a little bit of part of history. And when I saw what was going on in our U.S. Capitol, I was appalled. But in the final analysis, number one, Trump hasn't been convicted of insurrection.
Correct.
Colorado doesn't seem to realize that.
And so does Maine.
Yeah, right. But he made some very bad mistakes. But in the final analysis, in the end, he corrected it. I mean, he spent way too much time not moving forward, but everybody left, and he did say, I believe, go peacefully and protest peacefully and things, but nonetheless, that'll be a black mark in the history of Trump when it's written, and it was bad, and he's going to be fighting that for the rest of his life.
But there's a difference between insurrection and insurrection. You don't run around the state capitol with a camera phone. When we left Afghanistan, and Biden left all his stuff there, all our stuff, they're not his.
Yeah.
We own that. Yep. And the people came in behind him with real guns, and they really took it over with the real insurrection way.
Yeah, the media are the people that termed it an insurrection, and I watch all the media. Of course, I watch a lot of Fox, but I watch CNN, ABC. My wife is just like, NewsHour comes, I'm glued to watching all of them, and you look at my apps on my phone, it's the same way.
Sure.
And you have to do that to have a fair and balanced opinion.
Right. You got to know what the other side's thinking.
Yes, exactly. But I've always given the thought that, all of our media is based where?
Washington, D.C.
New York City, actually.
Oh, really?
Well, ABC, CBS, NBC, they all, their headquarters are in New York.
Okay.
They have correspondents in D.C., obviously, and all that. So does Fox. Fox is in New York. And unfortunately, the values of New York and the surrounding area and things are not the values of Wyoming or South Dakota or
right.
things like that. So inherently, we get a bit of a biased view and a biased reporting that way. But, the media has always been that way. Remember Randolph Hearst?
Rings a bell.
Yeah, well, he was considered, the newspaper king or whatever. Patty Hearst was his
daughter or something.
Daughter or granddaughter or something like that. But the media, if you go back and look at American history, and that's why people need to do this. Newspapers had an outsized influence in elections for a lot of the presidents, and they always will. But you have to make your own decisions, and the only way that you can make your decisions is to be educated about it and do your research. So to conclude on this January 6th deal, you're going to have to make up your own mind about it. And is it an insurrection, or was it an insurrection, or was it just a violent protest? And some of the people that have been prosecuted probably deserved it.
Well, they've earned it.
They've earned it. Maybe some of the terms have been a little long because you can be a fentanyl dealer and get off get off a lot easier. But nonetheless, the system's working that way. And I guess I'm willing to give Trump not a pass, but I'm willing to give him the idea that everybody's entitled to a mistake. And fortunately, nothing serious. Well, it was serious, but we saved the union, and I don't think. And I have the greatest respect for Pence standing up and saying, "I don't do this," and it worked, and I will bet you that Trump never. He's going to be so careful if he is elected president again with some of these constitutional issues. And I think we have a very good Supreme Court that's conservative.
Yep.
But yet, John Roberts is a very, very astute man, and the checks and balances will prevail.
Now, if we shift this in overdrive here, quick answer on, in your view, what's the most pressing issue facing northern Twin Cities metropolitan area today? I mean, not back when you were in, but I mean, just by seeing what's going on. What strategies do you believe are more necessary to address these, i.e., the fentanyl problem, i.e., the George Floyd square round thing? Just take your pick.
Well, yeah. I mean, I served on the Public Safety Committee for 2 terms over at the House, and I got to know all the cops and district attorneys and everything else. And I guess we've touched on this a little bit. We need to support our law enforcement.
Yep.
And then secondly, we need to reform the court system. And our Hennepin County District Attorney, I'll tell it to her face, is very ineffective, much too liberal, and needs to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. Secondly, we need to elect officials that are willing to pass these laws and not play their political games. I've often said that local government touches you more than any other government.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're driving down 169 and you get a speeding ticket, well, suck it up because you were speeding. And I have.
Maybe excessive acceleration, perhaps.
Well, I got a ticket from our cops in Champlin one time. And
he actually wrote it?
Yeah, they knew where it was, and I just went, yeah, okay, I got it. I was speeding, so just write me. I don't care. But you learn a lesson.
Sure.
And this fentanyl crisis is really related to the border. And this massive fentanyl that's coming in. I just got back from ice fishing up in Red Lake, like I was telling you.
Yep.
Far northern Minnesota. And as you know, Red Lake, part of it is federal Indian reservation up there.
Okay.
And we were talking to the guide that we had up there and out on the lake, and you're sitting in a fish house. You know how it goes. You're chatting quite a bit because the fish aren't biting.
Right.
But he was telling us about how severe the fentanyl crisis is on the reservation up there.
Okay.
And he was actually alluding to the fact that so many young people are dying from fentanyl up there that the elders are concerned about, is the tribe going to go on?
Oh, boy.
I mean, it is just absolutely horrible. And, of course, we have that here in the Twin Cities, too. And, society can't exist with these permissive laws regarding drugs.
But laws don't make laws enforce. Like our district attorney, if like our police, if they catch somebody, I've been nicked a couple times as far as being broken into. We caught them on camera. We literally LPR'd them right to their house. They've got the product in their hand, and they're not pressing charges. Well, they're not. They're just, let me say it this way: they're not pressing charges, but they're just like, oh, it's property. We don't care.
Well, again, I know that our current administration, Mayor Savas, has been trying to hire more cops, and this is an initiative that Ryan and I talked about some time ago. But Tim, we're in Hennepin County,
right? So no matter what you do, it goes downtown,
right?
And it means nothing.
And if you're a cop, and like our poor lady in Brooklyn Center, Kim Potter, and you make a mistake, and it was a serious mistake.
Very, very.
Yeah. And Kim was a resident of Champlin.
Yes, she was. We almost had her on the show.
Yeah, great gal. Her son played hockey, so I met her in passing a couple of times.
Yeah.
But cops don't want to work in Hennepin County because of,
yeah.
Now, you go across the river to Anoka County.
Sign them up. Sheriff's Department, take them all day long.
Yeah. Yep. So recruitment of cops, why would you want to be, you're a young kid, you're going to school, why would you want to be a cop?
Right. What is the incentive there? Oh, look, I see on TV that Kim's in jail for an accident. All this stuff. You know, Derek Chauvin, he was on the phone to Bob Kroll's when he was in his proper position for holding George Fentanyl down to the ground.
Yeah, George Fentanyl. Yeah. I mean, again, watch The Fall of Minneapolis, and you'll have some very serious questions about our legal system, all the way to the governor. But nonetheless, these are issues facing the North Metro, or any metro for that matter.
Right.
The other thing is, for Champlin, is responsible development. And it took a long time, but that riverfront development there, the amphitheater has been a tremendous success, and the event center has been used much more than I thought, and it's gaining more and more momentum. I think that's a wonderful gathering place for residents of the city. We're still hopeful that that restaurant, I know they're in negotiations, final negotiations to get that going, which will be, I think, a big thing for the North Metro in itself. So we're doing things that other cities are not doing.
Well, Champlin's 95% built out, isn't it? 98, something like that?
Yes, it is. And for instance, some of the last developments up there by Bowerberry Farm and all that have been, I think, home runs, both in terms of adding to the tax base and in terms of the demographic. Well, not the demographics, but we've attracted high taxpayer people into the
medium density. Yes.
Medium. It's primarily residential. Now, let's turn the page and go back to, for instance, Brooklyn Park. I am not a big believer in high-density housing. Mm-hmm. I am a believer in what we call life cycle housing, where I think everybody should have an opportunity to have an affordable house within the city. By saying affordable, I don't mean that it's subsidized. I mean that it's market rate affordable, and we have that. We have older housing stock here in Champlin, which is affordable. We have some apartments and everything else, which are good starter places.
And senior apartments.
We've excelled in senior apartments.
Yep.
And you know why, Tim? Senior apartments aren't a big crime problem.
Right.
And I'm not saying apartments in general are. I'm just saying some are.
Calls of service get up there pretty fast.
Right. Yeah. And seniors are really, I think, good people for cities.
They make good neighbors. Yep.
They do. So we've excelled at that. And the Met Council, of course, I don't know if your listeners are people in Champlin.
We got all kinds of listeners.
well, the Met Council, dictates to cities.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I'm fully aware of that.
And it's an unelected.
It's appointed.
It's
with no end date
by the governor. And I urge people to go on a website and look and see who your Met Council representatives are, because nobody knows. And then just look at their work history. They're a rubber stamp for the bureaucracy there, and obviously Southwest Light Rail proves it.
Well, when Mayor Sabis brought out the exits, me and him were kind of on point with that. I says, look, you launch it in Champlin, I'll launch it in Dayton at the city council. And it sure got a lot of attention. I did hear that Hennepin County dropped a couple of road projects for you, but for us, we picked up about 3 projects from the commissioner.
Right, but you also realize that there was some noise about Champlin maybe looking at joining Anoka County.
Right, the exits. That's what our attorney over there says, that we don't want to call it succession. We want to call it exiting from the current council.
Correct.
Current
Correct.
county.
And, sometimes you have to whine a little bit to get some things. And prior to our posturing, if you will, prior to this, we weren't getting jack from Hennepin County.
Right.
It's amazing how they woke up.
Well, you got their attention. We're on the news. Champlin's on the news. Dayton's on the news. Hey, look, we're going to do this, and we're going to push for this. Dayton's a little different because we can go to 2 different counties.
Yeah, you can. And of course, we would need 2 cities to do this.
Yes.
But the point is, Tim, that whole deal didn't just happen. Okay? It didn't happen. It was, I dare say, shall we say,
Orchestrated?
Well, you said that. I didn't.
Okay. Then who's the players?
Can't tell you.
Okay. I smell what you're stepping in. But, again, I brought it out over there. Ryan brought it out over here. And nobody wants to do nothing. They all want to say, we don't want to deal with it. And I think that's a bad thing to do. I think we should continue through with this.
Well, there are definite advantages for the citizens of Champlin. Obviously, taxes. Hennepin County is a very high tax county.
Oh, big time.
Compared to Anoka. Obviously, there's administration. Anoka, I think most people would say Anoka County has very good administration. And Champlin has a very, very small voice in Hennepin County, even now. And really, obviously, law enforcement, so on and so forth. So there's advantages, but it's very, if you, and I'm sure you look at it, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. Just think, for example, the property tax records, okay?
Okay.
They all have to be transferred and made sure that they're updated to Anoka County. That's a huge task.
Oh, I would imagine.
And there's just all the little nitty-gritty stuff would be difficult. Not impossible, but you'd have to have a committed group, a working group, to do this. Another example of what's going on nationally, of course, is counties in western Washington state want to join Idaho out there.
Okay.
Because they are so different from the coast. Their agriculture, rural values, and everything else, they fit right in with Idaho's politics and all of that. There's a movement afoot to do that, take and essentially partition the state of Washington. It's indicative of the turmoil that whether it's cities, counties, or states, and indeed our federal government are going through.
Now, I was expecting to break this up at about the 30 mark, but because we got so intrigued into this, we won't do a mid-roll. I'll let the computer pick a mid-roll. So we won't take a break, but I do want to ask some other questions before we bounce.
Sure.
Now, who took your spot, Zach? in Coon Rapids?
Yes, Zach did.
Okay, during your time in office, how did you navigate the complexities of bipartisan? Because, again, they're so polarized, and that if you ain't doing the right to left, and if you ain't a socialist left versus a democratic left, I mean, that's kind of a thing.
Well, yeah, I guess Jerry Newton over there, now Senator Jerry Newton, very good guy to work with, DFL, and we worked together way back when we were rebuilding the Coon Rapids Dam, which preserved the recreational pool in Champlin, because there was a big push to remove the dam and let the river flow freely. Shudder to think what that would have done to property values in our city, but Jerry was a very good guy to work with. I had a good relationship with Melissa Hortman. Haven't seen her recently, but you learn in business that you don't always get everything you want. But you mentioned the art of the deal.
Yes.
Okay. Well, yes, you got a deal, and you have to give and you have to take. Unfortunately, that is very unusual in the legislature now. But if you know how to duck and weave a little bit, you can get things done. Yeah.
Duck and weave. I got it. There's just so much that. There's so much to talk about it, but we only have 60 minutes, and I still got to put pre and post rolls in here. Now I'm going to go off script, and I'm going to just simply say, what do you got to say? Now, mind you, this is a worldwide show, but this will fit into your local genre. And what would you say that people should be doing locally in their government?
Well, I would simply say, get involved, be educated. Try to make the right decisions. Be mindful of your neighbors and your friends in the city. Champlin has always practiced politics that are different, and it hasn't been so terribly partisan. You need to work towards that, and granted, you're pushing a boulder up a hill nowadays. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's good in everybody, and you need to find that. And you need to be willing to compromise a little bit to get things done so everybody can pull a wagon equally.
A metaphor, pull a wagon equally. That's pretty insightful.
Well, if you're going to get something done, gridlock doesn't work very well, does it? And even if when I served, when I first came in, we were in the minority, so I know what that's like. The Republicans were in the minority. And then for 2 terms, we had the majority. And I urged our leadership in those 2 terms when we had the majority not to treat the Democrat minority like they treated us. It's just that simple. And you need to build bridges. And if you do that in business, you're going to be successful.
Sure. You're used to doing it.
You're used to doing it.
Yeah.
And, your customers and everybody else are going to appreciate that, and you're going to grow your company. But you need to do that a little bit in politics, too.
Sure. You can't stay so one-sided. But I've always had that on the fence feeling. I always have, as my customers, as my political side. You just listen. I mean, just because you don't make sense today, it doesn't mean it won't make sense later.
It's funny, isn't it, Tim? People, you mentioned listening, okay?
Yeah.
It's an art form. Now, this podcast and everything else, people are listening to it and all that. But in simple conversations today, you can be talking to somebody till you're blue in the face.
Sure.
And they're not listening to you.
Nope.
And so whether it's personal relationships within your family or whether it's political or whatever, you need to listen.
You can hear me now and listen to me later. Eventually, it's going to work.
Probably, yep.
Well, we are 56 minutes. I got some post-roll in here. Wow, this is what an incredible show. I expected to do a mid-roll, but because it was moving so well, you did a wonderful job. Podcast really appreciates it dramatically. It's just I can't thank you enough for coming in and taking your time.
Well, glad to do it. Thank you very much, Tim. It was a pleasure.
Okay, for Hutcast, we're going to sign off. Again, we'll put a mid-roll somewhere, and it might sound interrupted and choppy, but we'll have to live with it. And the guys out in the eastern side of Australia, no, I get what you're saying. I've already addressed that issue. It'll be fixed on the next commercials. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and I hope that all you over-the-seas guys can get some solace in what we're doing here locally. For Hutcast, signing off. Thanks again, everybody. And that's a wrap for Hutcast. Hutcast is, again, a pragmatic approach to seeing things how some people see them. If you like our show, give us a thumbs up on the Facebook site. Again, for Hutcast, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.